Hello, and welcome to the NFU's Shed Talks podcast. I'm Naomi Williams-Roberts, and I'm joined by my co-host, Josh Redford.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2.
You guys will get to know us as farming's equivalent of Gavin and Stacey. Coming up in today's pod, is your grass half full? We talk to livestock farmer David and grazing expert James about the impact of the dry summer and the challenges ahead.
It's been a year I never want to repeat, but we are innovative as farmers, and I think that's really helped. So there are things that we can do, but make sure you've got your fodder, make plans for it now, don't leave it too long.
Our team in Westminster looks ahead to a crucial autumn of lobbying for British farming.
Most importantly, we have the budget. Well, for goodness sakes, Rachel Reeves, stop the family farm tax is what we're mainly asking. But we've put in our submission to that now.
Plus, anyone for a cup of tea that's totally out of this world? We speak to scientists who are planning to grow tea on the moon. Josh, put the kettle on. Lots of milk, 1 sugar for me.
So what could you plant on the moon and what could grow there? And that's really what we've been looking at as part of the European Space Agency and others. And we're British, so what could be better than having a cup of tea?
Whilst the kettle is boiling, I just wanted to say what a great job Bizza and Luke did last week, kicking off our first episode of Shed Talks.
Okay, we're back. Naomi's got her tea. Let's kick off with introducing ourselves to our listeners. Naomi, you go first.
Well, you may have picked up, if for the astute listener, I am from South Wales. So I am a tenant farmer, first generation, along with my husband, and we farm at home beef, sheep, pigs, and at the moment we're setting up for our pumpkin patch. What about you, Josh? What do you do over in your end of the country?
Nice. So I live over in Sussex. I'm the county advisor over here in the east. And yeah, I've come from a background in potatoes. Love a potato. Spent 5 years up in the fens farming those. And it's been at the NFU for almost 4 years now.
There's lots to love about a potato.
There's a lot going on. There's been a lot going on in the news this week. There's been some stuff around inheritance tax, a lot around milk prices. What would you say, Naomi, is the key bits that you've been pulling out of the news?
Well, as you know, we were chatting the other day whilst I was buzzing around the supermarket, and we were talking about milk prices and protein, and you know how is farming really missing a trick with how they're marketing products. So yourself, Josh, I know you're really health conscious. You might buy a protein powder or two, do you?
Yeah, no, so I did a bit of research on this. I mean, it's all over the news at the moment. You've got Joe Wicks with his World News series on Channel 4, talking all about additives in food. It was World Egg Day on Friday, so our brilliant egg producer celebrating their eggs. Yeah, it got us talking, didn't it, about how much protein in our raw produce does it actually make up a protein?
Well, I did a bit of research on it and looking at a product which really caught my eye because it said grass-fed, and it was a grass-fed claim. $64.99 for 1 kilogram of this protein powder. Again, I had a little look. That's 33 servings, £1.96 a serving. Milk. If you drank 900 millilitres of milk, you get the same amount of protein, and it would cost you 66p. Do farmers need to go on a marketing course instead?
I sit on the East Regional Dairy Board. We've got some amazing guys that have been a bit innovative. They're marketing straight to the consumer. I've got one of my members who is quite famous for marketing his milk directly into London. Another member up in Hertfordshire who does it really well locally too. I think some of our members are marketing locally, which is great. But going back to the milk big hit recently, you know, this has caused quite a bit of discussion around dairy contracts, gone through a lot of change. What can you pick out there, Naomi?
Well, having a look at it, the excuses that have been given by the contracts is that there's an oversupply globally, which has led to a drop in commodity prices. But this will be the first test for the fair dealing obligation milk regulations. And I know that's something that yourself at the NFU and the rest of the office are going to continue to monitor and just make sure that it's compliant and highlighting any behaviours that go against the intentions of the new regulation adjuster. So it'll be interesting now. This is its first proper test, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about. Yeah, locally, I think it's just key to know that the regulations they don't govern changes in milk price, which are based on market indicators. But what they do is require milk buyers to be transparent about what indicators are being used to calculate these milk prices. So I think it's going to be really interesting over the next few weeks how this progresses. But yeah, it's important to flag to all members that it's the price wise. We're struggling across all sectors.
Something else that I thought was really interesting that really links into this is the NFU's homegrown protein plan. So, we've mentioned about the price drop, but actually what can we do to help with that income? Maybe lower the cost of inputs by being able to grow more on our own farms. So could you tell me a bit more? I know you mentioned that as I was whizzing around Asda and other supermarkets, but is there something there that you could signpost our listeners to so they can get ahead of it?
Yes, we've got some info online. So this is a plan launched by our brilliant crops board chair Jamie Burrows, and it's all about homegrown protein. Something that's been discussed for years in the UK. Homegrown protein, it's a really difficult thing to achieve. I think a lot of homegrown protein has been focused on the animal feed market, but looking beyond that, I think they could, going back to our discussion around human nutrition, there could be some interesting scope there too. So yeah, go head on to NFE online and check it out. There's an article there for you to read.
And I know at home we've grown peas and oats this year to be able to get more protein into our growing animals, and it definitely has brought down our input costs. We're not having to buy in so much concentrates. But talking about growing animals and feed, we're going to discuss the broader topic of grass with our next guests, and that's something that we didn't see a lot of over the summer.
So today we're joined by two guests. The first is James Daniel. James is a beef and sheep farmer from Cornwall and founder of Precision Grazing. After graduating from Harper Adams, James spent time in New Zealand where he was inspired by their innovative grazing systems. And on returning home, he set up Precision Grazing, which helps UK farmers to boost productivity and profitability through smarter pasture management.
And alongside James, we've got David Barton, who not only is the NFU National Livestock Board Chair, he farms a suckler herd in the Cotswolds and grows his own cereals, and whether he likes to admit it as well, has a small flock of pedigree Dorset sheep. I know both of these guests are keen to get started, so let's hear from them now. David, I'm going to start with you if that's okay, and then I'm going to move on to James. So we've discussed before this podcast the effects of the summer, and in your opinion, it's a summer that hopefully we won't see for another generation. If it does continue to get hotter, as is predicted with global warming, how do you think that we can learn from the mistakes during the summer, being maybe utilisation of grass, to better improve our resilience?
Okay, so I'm not sure that we made mistakes. I think nature made a bit of a mistake for us this year. So over the last 10 years, I've had to cope with drier summers and some wetter summers. So I think we need to manage that. And I just think that actually this summer that's gone for us in Gloucestershire has been extraordinary. So we didn't really have rain from the end of February until September. Well, when you have a period of dry weather like that, it's very difficult to grow grass on the Cotswolds. So, it has been extraordinarily difficult and different. But what are we doing otherwise? Well, I think I know we've certainly in the last 5 years, we've had a programme of looking at what can we grow that will be more drought resistant, because we have seen some drier summers over that period. And so we're looking at herbal lays, and we've tried that, and they are successful. Deeper rooting plants and then that sort of multi-species. Also looking at different grasses. So although I don't particularly like it, cocksfoot is something that really grows well in the Cotswolds in dry weather. In a wet year, you think, well, have I bothered? Because the cattle don't like it so much, and I don't like it so much, but it gives us that resilience. So having that in the mix, I think is that's how we're doing it. And we've also, over the last 5 years, we've been rotationally grazing. So what I've actually noticed this autumn is once the rain came, in September, and we've had about 5 inches now, so which is a lot. The ground is still dry actually, so that just goes to show what an extraordinary summer it was. But the herbal lays have come back extraordinarily well, far better than the permanent pasture actually. So we're now grazing. We're not feeding anything outside at the moment. The suckler cows and calves are relying just on grass. So I think we're actually seeing the benefit of starting to try and build a more resilient herbal lay or that type of thing into our grazing platform. And although we did give up on rotational grazing in June because there was nothing to graze, basically, even so, in this autumn we've seen an improvement. So I think there are things that we can do, and I think I'm very aware that we need to do those things because what I want to do is produce beef from grass.
It's really interesting that you said about the herbal lays doing well even within that drought period, even though you gave a bit of a rest from rotational grazing. On the way to our farm in Monmouthshire, everything was like a desert. And James, I'm sure you've been onto many farms that have been dealing with desert-like conditions. But the only green field in the entirety of Monmouthshire was a herbal lay field, a mixture of sort of chicory, red clover, that type of thing. And whereas we'd only had one cut of grass, this field was growing for fun and it was bright green. So it's really interesting to see almost the contrast between those types of species and the resilience against potentially an old delay. James, is that something you help a lot of farmers? You go onto a lot of farms up and down the country. Is that something that you're seeing to be a more common practice that's been uptaken?
Yeah, I think ever since countrywide stewardship and then more lastly SFI certainly has been encouraging farmers to try and to experience the benefits of a herbal lay. And I think in the right situation, with the right management, there are many benefits to be had. Notably, perhaps more benefits for a farm that's reliably dry. And as we think about dry farms and wet farms, I think we're starting to think more about effective rainfall. And that's really the rainfall the farm receives between April and September. That's when farms normally expect to grow the bulk of their grass. And as perhaps David alluded to, the challenge with this season was that we didn't get rain in the spring, which would allow at least forage to be made, even if that forage was then to be fed back through the summer. So incredibly challenging season. And I think Dave was right in saying that, I believe everyone I've certainly spoken to and been working with has done their best to manage it as well as they can. And the context now is to think about how we're going to get through this winter with the forage stocks we have, but equally what do we do to adapt our business going forwards. And herbal lays are definitely part of that solution. They're not perhaps the only solution, but they're definitely part of it.
Is there any tips that you could say, looking at that management and we'll go into the autumn and now the winter and, strategies for coping with winter, but is there another strategy that our listeners could do, maybe short term, lower investment? I'm thinking people that are going into tenancies that don't have the ability to put in these new lays, strip grazing, rotational grazing. Is there something that they can adopt quicker?
If you're a beef and sheep farmer or dairy farmer, if you're a farmer with livestock, it's really the grazing management lever that is the one you should reach for first, because that can often be deployed with very little or no cost. It's really a change in management. And certainly for this period of the autumn, we are seeing grass growth, incredible recovery from very, very dry looking fields. And we're seeing a lot of grass being grown on farm now. So our thoughts and tactics with clients at the minute is around optimizing that. So trying to get setting the farm up to grow as much grass as possible. And the way you achieve that is really through rotational grazing. So moving the stock regularly 2 or 3 times a week at this stage of the year so that they do not eat the regrowth, and that maximises the plant productivity and therefore will ensure the farm will grow as much grass as possible now to put the farm in a good position for the autumn, the winter, but also importantly for the spring, because the grass that's on farm today is about 2/3 of the grass that will be there for the spring. So it's really important we manage this autumn and winter period well. And I think one of the risks we see on farm this winter is people will graze for too long into the winter because of the lack of forage stocks. And that could make next spring exceedingly difficult to start the year there with no grass.
So David, yourself, you've got your suckler herd on farm. You also grow your own cereals. You mentioned that the spring rain didn't come in order to support the grass growth. How is the outlook for the winter for yourself? What are you doing to make sure that you've got the feed to last the winter? Have you brought your animals in yet? Are they still out?
Yes, so this is the biggest challenge I've ever faced as a farmer, I'll be honest. So we didn't make any silage. We had to graze our May grass growth and because we didn't have enough to graze. And I'm thinking, well, we'll make some good silage in June. Well, it didn't rain, so we didn't make any silage. Our hay crop that we make was about 30% of what it should have been, so that's put us in a really difficult position. We did whole crop all our spring barley, so we had some forage that sort of was seen to the right thing to do, and actually those results have come in, and it's actually looking pretty good. I've had to buy in a lot of fodder, so I've bought in silage. So far, I've had 4 lorry drags of silage in. To try and help. I need a bit more. I've got plenty of straw in the shed. And so what we have changed here is I actually bought a diet feeder for the first time. I've never had one before, which means we can use all sorts of products. So my finishing cattle came in early. And actually, they're absolutely flying. We weighed them today, just over 2 kilos a day. They're nearly finished. So they'll be gone. Suckler cows are out grazing with the calves. We'll wean. I was going to wean early, but actually, because of the grass growth we've had, we're going to keep those out. And it looks as if the next couple of weeks will be kind to us. So really trying to use this autumn period. But I think my advice to anyone is, because it is so short locally, I'm actually using a hay straw merchant to find fodder for me, because my silage has been coming from Carmarthen, where they've had a very good grass growing season. So it's just trying to manage it. It's a very challenging year for us, but I think the positive here is that we do have what I'd call sustainable prices for beef right now, and that's helping tremendously. And we've also got, the cereal sector are really suffering, so we've got cereals which are really good value to feed as well. So it's just being innovative about what you're going to feed your stock. Make sure that you've got enough straw fodder for those ruminants you've got on farm, because they need that. But there are other options there. Use your nutritionist. Make sure that you've got the right ration going into the cattle, and actually it will work. So it's a challenge, but it's been a year I never want to repeat. But we are innovative as farmers, and I think that's really helped. So there are things that we can do, but make sure you've got your fodder. Make plans for it now. Don't leave it too long.
So I sit on the regional dairy board over here in the east, and the last 2 meetings we've had, forage has been one of the key points of discussion. How you obviously you sit on the national livestock boards. How's that variability across the country looking?
Yeah, good question, Josh. And it's something I've monitored. I mean, I raised it with DEFRA because I'm the livestock chair. I raised it in DEFRA on the 16th of May. That's when I recognised there was a significant problem coming, and we wanted to get derogations, which we didn't get, which is, I'm really sore about that, to be honest. There was things they could have done and helped, but they didn't. So that was going way back to then. What we noticed was the further east you go, the drier it is, certainly up through the centre of the country. So really from down in Surrey, right the way through in Gloucestershire, Oxfordshire, going up to even up into Yorkshire, and on that other side of Yorkshire, it's dry as well. So you come west, down the western side of the country, Cumbria and Cheshire have had a very good grass growing season. Some of Wales have had, and they've been mixed as well. Some of Wales have had a really good growing season. Cornwall, they've had their best grass growing season ever, apparently. And some parts of Devon have been okay, but a large part of the country has been very dry. And I reckon Gloucestershire, where I am, is probably about as dry as it's been anywhere. But I'll challenge anyone to beat me on that. It's not something I'm proud of having, but my God, it has been dry. So a large part of the country, fodder is short, and straw also, because a lot of the cereal crops were light.
So James, what are you seeing that down at your home farm? How's it looking?
I think certainly farms in the west held on a lot longer, a little bit more rain, heavier soils. But there's some challenges in the west as well with high stocking rates, so it can all be relevant and relative. And certainly, we found a slight shortfall of forage, perhaps not at home, but with all our clients through the southwest as well. I think I'd echo David's words that the key thing at this stage is to get a good plan in place for the autumn and for the winter. There's a saying that you don't want to let one bad year become two. And so I think on a beef and sheep farm and for dairy, the focus is then on assessing the condition of stock in terms of body condition, looking at the forage in stock, working out what the gap is. And there's people around, myself included, that can help farmers to do that. And it's well advised to lean on the support network they have. It's sort of to grasp the nettle or kiss the frog, whatever expression you want to use, and to get that work done today, because there's always more options today to solve a problem than there will be in 2 or 3 or 4 months' time.
And we're out a lot at the moment, meeting with stakeholders, MPs. We're talking about other issues, but for both of you, Dave and James, if members are talking to MPs in particular, what would be if you could have like one ask that people want to help our livestock industry over winter going into spring, what would that ask be? What do you want people to be asking for?
They have a job to do to build bridges, and they missed a golden opportunity with environmental schemes and derogations, which they didn't take, which they were asked for. So, as I say, I'm pretty sore about that. I think what they need to do is there's too much uncertainty currently in agriculture. That has been the making of government and DEFRA. And so what they need to do is to start giving farmers the confidence, because beef and sheep farmers need to produce more product. It is in short supply, and that's why in the shops it'll be expensive. What they need to do is encourage farmers to produce more of that really good sustainable product that we do better than anyone in the world. And our grazing that we do, and for the environment and everything that we do around that, livestock are essential, and they need to recognise that and actually start giving us the confidence.
And James?
I think there's a piece around some stability and some confidence. As you say, we've got a fantastic industry that should be well supported. Some of the actions that businesses need to take to ensure future resilience are medium to long term investments. So whether that's in herbal lace, because I think for many farms, we need to move beyond ryegrass now. It's not fit for purpose in the way where we see the climate, or where we're feeling the climate is heading. So there's an investment in new seeds and species that are better adapted to these conditions, and a need for some infrastructure, whether that's for livestock water systems, noting the high temperature, whether that's maybe an agroforestry that provides more shade for animals when they are grazing. But these aren't short term, and these aren't cheap investments, and so we need to see some confidence within the industry, as the goods prices are indicating, to allow farmers to weather this short term storm of a tough year and to move forward and to invest in the business.
It's really good to hear from you guys that although it's been a really difficult time and we are lacking support from the government and DEFRA, and that's definitely something that we need to continue to speak about and to speak out about, and get them to realise that the threat is now and that we do need to produce more. But it's really positive to hear from you guys where you're thinking differently, where members are thinking differently, farmers are thinking differently, and that there are a lot of options out there for support. So if our members are looking, farmers are looking at their farm and thinking, oh my God, what do I do? That actually there is a network out there that is able to offer some light, some creative thinking, some other options, be it buy in additional inputs or slightly change their methods. I suppose wrapping up for us on what is ultimately a really big topic, is there a takeaway that you'd like to leave on a positive note for our farmers now looking forward into winter and spring, and hopefully a much better summer?
I mean, let's be clear. When you look at business, if you have a tight supply and a strong demand for a product, that's always good for business. And we have a really good demand for our red meat, beef and lamb, in the UK and globally, and supply is tight. And so that is creating a really good environment for livestock farmers in the UK to really grasp the nettle and go out and produce more, because I think we're in a really good place. This year has been incredibly challenging, but this is 1 year. And actually, if you look forward and at other commodities, livestock's a really good place to be. And we need to really build that build the confidence in the sector and grow it.
Well, thank you, David. And James?
Yeah, so I think on the back of that positivity, I would suggest that for as a sector, there's a lot of opportunity on the table. A lot of the opportunity is really in grazing management and use of new species. We've still got a good climate, and outside of a challenging year, we can produce a lot of forage on farm, but there's an opportunity left on farm, through the nature of our current grazing management. So, a lot of farms could move their stock more often, and in doing so, produce more forage, more pasture, could get further into a dry period without running out, and could recover quicker as well, and really build that resilience in the business. And for many businesses, there's a very low capital investment requirement to take that opportunity. Most of it's knowledge and confidence. So if the business can invest in those tools and that knowledge, then there's a fantastic opportunity, as we're seeing with our clients, to really build this resilience and to capitalise, as David said, on the opportunity to increase production and to make use of good prices to invest further in the business.
I will say, anybody looking to invest in electric fencing, try not to do it with your husband or wife, because very many times I've been near divorce trying to untangle electric fencing. But once you get it right, it's perfect. But no, thank you both.
really interesting chat, Naomi. What are your thoughts?
Hopefully, a lot of our members will share my opinion. It's great to reflect on how difficult the summer has been for a lot of farmers up and down the country. But it's also really hopeful to be able to look forward and know what to do or know how to react or know that there are people out there to help support. Is there something, Josh, that you would say it would affect or your area could take away?
For me, it was really good to hear what we're doing at a national level from the NFU. You know, I work with the regional dairy boards and livestock boards. To be able to hear that from a national perspective is really good for me.
I think it just goes to show whatever your position, there's always something to learn, isn't there? And I'm gonna stop you there, Josh, because you did forget something. I need some biscuits with my tea, if that's okay. So whilst you're going to get those, I think we should head over to hear from Westminster and the Westminster team.
Cool. I'll go and grab them, and then we'll be back.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of NFU in Westminster. It's Olivia Phoenix again, but this week I'm joined by my colleague Scott.
Thanks, Olivia. Hello, everyone. Scott Pepe here, External Affairs Manager for the NFU and also the Chief Speechwriter.
That's a great job title, Scott. Do you want to give us a quick summary of what particularly the speechwriter bit means to your role?
Yeah, so day to day it's helping you out with all the lobbying, but I also have a sort of side hustle, which is being a speechwriter. So that's helping to write at least some of the big speeches. So that might be the President's Conference speech at the NFU conference or the speeches they give throughout the year at AGMs or indeed at the party conferences.
So now, as this podcast drops, MPs are back in Westminster for their autumn period, which basically means anything between now and Christmas that they've promised to deliver could come.
Yeah, we always dread the autumn period because it can literally be any time from August to, in fact, one day, Christmas Eve. Do you remember when the Saws announcement was made on Christmas Eve, having been promised in autumn?
Still technically autumn by government standards. But this autumn, we are looking ahead to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which we'll talk about in a bit. Also, the Protection of Livestock Bill, another really important piece of legislation going through Parliament. And most importantly, we have the budget. Well, for goodness sakes, Rachel Reeves, stop the family farm tax is what we're mainly asking. But we've put in our submission to that now.
I think we'll cover that at a later podcast because I think that probably deserves its own podcast.
Absolutely. It's the crucial thing for members. 26th of November is the date for your diary.
But members, I think, will be interested in the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. So I could just give a very brief summary on that. That's a bill that's now in the House of Lords. There's some good stuff in it, and we obviously, anyone who's tried to put a planning application in on their farm will know that any attempt to modernise the planning system is welcome. But there are a few red flags in the planning and infrastructure.
Oh, what are we most concerned about?
Well, in their wisdom, the government have decided to give Natural England compulsory purchase powers. We're pretty worried about that and are fighting that pretty hard. It's quite odd, I think, in a bill designed to speed up the planning process that they've given Natural England compulsory purchase powers. Let's not forget Natural England opposed their own planning application for their own office in Cornwall a few years ago.
Is that true?
Yes, it is true. Members should go and look it up right now on Google. Natural England opposes own planning application. It's absolutely true, and we're leaning on that quite heavily with some of the MPs and peers who are keen to unlock the planning system.
Well, we have now got a new Secretary of State in that department, haven't we? MHCLG, the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. We've got Steve Reid, who's obviously well known to us as the former DEFRA Secretary of State. So I think we built up a good relationship with him when he was in post in DEFRA, and now, no pressure, Steve, but you understand the challenges for farmers, so, it's on your shoulders.
Exactly. If Steve Reid thought he'd finished hearing from the NFU moving to a new job, he is sadly mistaken, because we've got lots to say to him about this bill, and we'll be fighting in the House of Lords very hard to get those Natural England powers taken out.
Yes, you mentioned the House of Lords, Scott. I think it's worth mentioning sort of all the work that we do with the House of Lords and why they're important for us in that sort of lobbying journey and how we get the changes that we want. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, the House of Lords is really important. Actually, it's a great place for us to do some of our lobbying work. The House of Lords, well, for a start, the government doesn't have a majority in the House of Lords like it does in the Commons. The House of Lords is also a bit more cross-party. Members of the House of Lords are slightly less likely to take their party whip, and there are also members of the House of Lords that aren't a member of any political party at all. There's also just a bit more expertise in there, and they've got the time to look through bills line by line in a bit more detail. So we use the House of Lords a lot when we've got quite a technical issue that we need to change the government's mind on.
We've actually got a great success sort of hot off the press as well, haven't we, from working with the House of Lords? One of our favourite peers, Lord Carrington. Scott, you did lots of work with him on the Renters' Rights Bill, which again doesn't sound like the most exciting of bills, but actually we got a really important amendment through.
Yeah, so in the external question, we definitely do have our favourite peers, and Lord Carrington is one of them. He's a crossbench peer. He's also a member of the NFU, which is very helpful. And yes, we've been doing lots of work on the Renters' Rights Bill. So very briefly, the Renters' Rights Bill, Angela Rayner's flagship bill. And basically, it's designed to make sure that landlords must have a good reason to take possession of property. Not a lot we can argue with there. And to be fair to the government, they said that one of those reasons was if you needed to take back a property to house an agricultural worker. All good stuff, but they didn't really define agricultural worker properly or fully, and crucially they failed to include self-employed agricultural workers in that, and lots of people in the agriculture industry are self-employed these days. People might have someone self-employed at lambing season, or a self-employed vet, or a sprayer, something like that. So we worked with Lord Carrington just to tweak the law very slightly on that, and we won that vote in the House of Lords. Not the sort of thing that'll make the front pages necessarily, but the sort of crucial win we try to deliver for members week in, week out.
And has that piece of legislation crossed His Majesty the King's desk yet? Is it on our statute books?
It's not quite. So the King hasn't yet signed it. So we won the vote in the Lords, and then how it works, obviously, is that the Commons and the Lords have to agree on a bill before it goes to the King. So our amendment was won in the Lords. We did a bit of work to make sure that something very similar got through in the Commons, and now the Lords have to have one last look at it, and then the King will get the joy of signing the NFU amendment and all the bill in a couple of weeks' time.
Excellent. Well, watch this space on the planning and infrastructure bill then as well, because we've got high hopes and we're working hard on it, so we'll keep you updated on that. But we also probably should talk a little bit about party conferences, which we talked a lot about last week, but since then we've been to the Labour conference.
We've been to the Labour conference and the Conservative conference. I just got back from that on Wednesday, the last man standing. So were you pleased, Liv, with how those are two, obviously the two bigger parties. Were you pleased with how they went?
Yeah, really pleased. It's nice. We can put our suitcases, our business cards away, and of course the anti-bac from all the handshaking. Hopefully we've survived without getting a conference flu. But for the last few years, we've had a stand in the exhibition hall. So you might have seen our tractor in the backdrop of various news broadcasts from conference. And that was really good for us for raising our profile. But sometimes people did just come along for a photo opportunity. And
I find that very hard to believe that an MP would ever come for the photo opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. That's not in their nature at all. They're not in it for the promo. But so, as you said, but this year it really wasn't appropriate to do that because of the Labour Party in being in government and what they've proposed on inheritance tax. Maybe we'll do a stand again in the future, but this year we tried something different, and that was to do the Great British Breakfast at each of the party conferences. So we did that at Reform, at Lib Dem, at Labour and at Conservative conference. And we think we probably had about 600, judging by the breakfast we served, we had about 600 people come along to speak with the NFU. And what was different about conference this time is we were able to have, over those delicious breakfasts, we were able to have really good conversations with delegates, with MPs that came along, with other stakeholders as well. And we're really pleased to have the new Secretary of State there, as well as the Shadow Secretary of State, Victoria Atkins. And as we mentioned last week, we had the kind of key people from the Liberal Democrats too.
Who'd have thought if you'd have laid on a free breakfast, hundreds of people would come? I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really good that we tried something different. And as you say, if you're coming for breakfast, you do have to stay and eat your breakfast. And that was a great opportunity for us to turn the screws a bit more on MPs and really drill down into sort of our concerns and our lobbying priorities. So I'm really pleased. I thought they went really well.
Absolutely. And the difference as well is, as you said, people have to sit down and eat their breakfast, so they do stay around for longer. And we found that people weren't then rushing out afterwards. We had a number of members there who were able to chat to people too. And we've got, quite a few things to follow up, not a few business cards to reply to and get back in touch with. So overall, a very successful conference season, I think, for the NFU. What was your highlight about this conference season, Scott?
I think everything you said is right, Liv. I think for me, the real highlight of those breakfasts was getting so many members. So normally when we have our iconic stand, it's in the secure zone, right in the centre of conference. Our breakfasts we hosted just outside, and that meant that not only did we get lots of MPs and delegates at them, but we were able to invite members as well. And we had lots of members at our breakfast, and that was great because we were able to introduce them to MPs and ministers and shadow ministers, and our members were always able to bring to life some of the challenges that we're lobbying on.
So all in all, NFU conference season, great success. That's a wrap. So now the focus is back in Westminster, and at the next episode of this, we will be talking about our Food and Farming Fellowship Programme, which has been our year-long programme with a group of MPs, taking them out to various farms and doing visits across the country over the last year, and also a bit about the new tenant commissioner as well, who's just been appointed in post. He's been out on David Exwood's farm, but he's also been at our tenant conference. So lots to look forward to.
Interesting to hear from our Westminster team. I was there just on Monday with that's our new hub, Naomi, for our East team. So I was there on Monday, and it's always good to catch up with those guys. We even had the fellowship scheme down in West Sussex. They came out to a big veg farm we've got over at Barfoot's, and that was back in the summer. What have you been up to this week, Naomi? What's been keeping you busy?
I've been across the breadth and width of Wales, seeing lots and lots of farms with work. But I went to a dairy farm yesterday, an absolutely massive unit down in the southwest of Wales. They were so progressive. They've gone overseas to look at different ideas about how to rear their young stock. They've had different things made. Their calf health was absolutely impeccable. And I know they had a group of farmers from further up the country come down to have a look on a visit to take ideas back to their own farms about how to progress and how to be more efficient on farm. But their challenges are NVZs. You know, they need to get their prices, everything paid for. They need to have a load of cattle on farm and continue to grow. But NVZ continue to be a challenge. But I know you had an MP on farm this week, didn't you?
So not quite on farm. So I met actually the post-COVID world. I met over Teams with an MP, which is always a bizarre experience. But yeah, I met with a Lib Dem MP. It was actually really good. They can meet with us as NFU staff, and it's a really efficient way to sort of meet with them. We talked about all different things, and we've now set up a meeting on farm. On a member's farm for February. So yeah, a bit of a useful use of time. But yeah, I mean, I'd organised this week a couple of TB update meetings for members, just really informative sessions in East Sussex and West Sussex. It's all about members sort of having the opportunity to lean into the NFU experts and also local vets too. So yeah, it's been a busy week this end.
We had a similar thing over. So I'm part of the livestock board in Wales representing Monmouthshire, and we had a conversation from APHA as well, just an update on the situation with TB, which obviously continues to be a problem.
And do you think, from like a member that's on the ground, do you feel that it's best to be meeting in person now? I struggle to sort of nail down exactly how members want to meet. What's your preferred way?
I think farmers are always short on time, aren't they? Time is precious. Time on the yard is time that's wasted, really, that they could be in the tractor seeding. But I don't think anything beats the personal touch. If you had somebody like an MP on farm, your insurance company, anybody, having somebody come to your farm gate and have a conversation with you, people buy from people believe in people. And, I think that's why this podcast has been started as well. So we can hear from the diverse range of farmers, technical experts, all up and down the country, overseas. And yeah, I don't think anything beats the personal touch. And I think that's sometimes something we lost during COVID. Teams is great, but a handshake is best.
Sure. I mean, like we're launching into branch AGM season now, so we're as county advisors, we're flat out giving up our evenings to attend all these different branch meetings, and yeah, it's so good to meet with members.
That tea was out of this world, Josh, which actually leads us on to our next guest very nicely.
So we're joined now by Professor Nigel Mason. He's from the University of Kent. We grabbed our attention with their story about growing tea on the moon. We've got lots of questions for Nigel on this. Nigel, would you like to introduce yourself? Why tea and why the moon?
As you said, I'm a professor at the University of Kent. My background is molecular physics. And for many years, we've been looking at space exploration. We've been landing things on comets. We've been going to Mars, we're other space missions. But one of the really interesting things now is the fact that we're going back to the moon. The American Artemis project is ramping up. The Chinese are going. The Indians have plans. There will be ESA astronauts. So this has led to a whole series of kind of challenges. What are we going to do when we get there on the moon? We're not just going to go there and plant a flag and drive around. We want to do some real science. And that means we're going to have to build bases there where people are going to have to stay for periods of time. Which brings you to the natural problem of what are they going to eat? You can't have your sort of Uber delivery service, sort of just ring up Waitrose and hope that they'll pop up there and drop stuff off. And taking stuff to the moon itself, it's weight, it's expensive. So astronaut diet is not terribly enterprising. A lot of it is capsules and everything is. So people have been thinking for a while, what can we grow in space? And on the space station, we've been doing some of that. But when you go to the moon, it's different. You have a soil, you have a regolith. So what could you plant on the moon and what could grow there? And that's really what we've been looking at as part of the European Space Agency and others. And we're British, so what could be better than having a cup of tea? And we actually, you may not know this, but we grow tea in England now. We grow tea down in Dartmoor. Our colleagues in Dartmoor, Joe Harper and his Dartmoor tea, grow tea. So they offered us some plants. I wonder if our plants could grow on the moon. And that's where it began.
Naomi, we've been talking about this a lot off air. I know you've got lots of questions, so I'll hand it over to Naomi to delve a bit deeper.
Well, firstly, my husband is a big drinker of tea. I don't think he'd be able to cope without any tea. So he'd be really glad to know that you're progressing. So when we do all eventually live on the moon, he's got his Tetley hopefully up there. You mentioned about the soil. To me, it's like sand in my mind, most probably because as a child you play with like moon sand. Is it high in its pH? Is it alkali? Is it acidic? What is its structure?
Exactly. I mean, basically, lunar soil, what we call regolith, because basically it's crushed rock. It's a basaltic rock, slightly alkaline, but of course we can treat it. And one of the first things we wanted to see was whether we could take a lunar soil mimic, which is basically a mixture of rocks which mimic the type of rock that you will have on the lunar surface, put water into it, because obviously you've got to have water for the things to grow, see how we could water it, and to see whether the plants could take root. We've done work on seeds and seeing how seeds germinate in such soil. But this is one of the kind of first where you take a sort of mature plant. We obviously plan to do other plants. It just happens to be that tea obviously happens to be more publicly in people's minds. You may want to, maybe you wouldn't get quite so much interest if you were going to say you were going to grow tomatoes or radishes. So we tried tea.
I think if there's one thing our listeners understand is soil. We've learnt a lot from space exploration over the years, and it's in our kitchens through non-stick pans and
The one everybody remembers, yes.
down to our biro pens. What learnings do you think in the future could this research help for back on Earth for farmers on farms?
The lunar soil is a very poor soil, and today we have the problems of climate change, we have the problems of desertification, and how can you grow crops in soils that are very poor in nutrients with very small amounts of water? This is another key problem. We're going to have to, how are we going to get the water to keep the plants going? So a lot of the research that we do here at Kent is related to climate change. You know that Kent, we all know this, we are the Garden of England. We are growing all these things, but it's changing. I hope everybody and your listeners are buying our nice English wines now, being grown in this part of the country. And we are growing crops in different soils and under different climatic conditions. So the work that we're doing with these very poor soils, can also be used and is being used to look at growing crops in, say, more desertification areas, which have become very dry soil. The organic material may have been wasted. So we're learning a lot about the growth of things under extreme conditions. And to be honest, the moon is a very extreme condition. So if crops can grow there, and we can grow them with very small amounts of water and small amounts of nutrients, then this, of course, is what we can use to help us grow things and improve our crop yields in parts of the world that are really struggling with desertification and climate change.
So you mentioned that the original plants were from Dartmoor. Did you have to change the plants at all to get them to adjust to the soil, or no, they took root? Oh, amazing. For the listeners at home, Nigel's shaking his head.
That was really the question. So we had some
Yeah.
controls. We were growing these mature tea plants. Joe has his plantation there, so he's got a lot of expertise at growing tea. It's green tea. You know, I'm afraid your PG tips, we're concentrating on green tea, partly because you're not going to have to add milk and sugar, right? Or other questions about where you get those from. But it's a green tea, and so our control was growing it in good, nice Devonian soil. That was our control. Then the other control was to plant it in a poor soil, a very sandy soil, the sort of thing that you're going to get in desert conditions. And then the two others were growing it in the lunar soil and in the Martian soil. We watered them with the conditions, the sort of amount of water that we would be able to supply them in a lunar base. And the results were very interesting. We didn't expect the lunar soil, the plants, to root into the lunar soil as strongly as they did. We then examined their root content. We see how the water changed over, so we saw if the pH was changing and the other nutrients. And essentially, the tea plants grew as well in their soil as they did against the control of Devon. So I don't know if Devon and the moon can be twinned, but at least as far as tea is concerned, they liked both. But they did not like Martian soil. They all died.
You've given this go with tea, got our attention, but what next? Are you going to try, what's your next steps with this project?
Yeah, a lot of the project is to look at other things that can grow. We're growing a lot of things from seed. The kind of mission would be that you will take seeds into space. Perhaps they can be treated. They have to maybe be treated for being able to be resistant to the radiation that occurs in space. So this means sort of making the seed core with the a little bit thicker, so that they will germinate in seed trays in the space station or in the lunar base, and then they will be transplanted. And then that's where we take the slightly bigger plants and we put them into the lunar greenhouse. That's the kind of ethos that you're trying to do for the whole purpose. So you take a whole lot of seeds up, and there are various experiments we want to look at about how we can treat the seeds before they go up, how we can make sure that they're very healthy. There are ways of treating them for that. Maybe that they're a little bit more radiation resistant. And the sort of things that we're predominantly looking at are things that you can eat, salady like things. Another thing that grows very well is broccoli. Broccoli is a great crop for space because, as you all know, you can eat all of it. You can eat the stems, you can eat the leaves, many other plants, tomatoes, for example. Yeah, you can eat the little tomato, but all the rest of the stuff, what do you do with it? So we're looking at things like radish, lettuce, those sort of type of things, which we know that we can grow and can grow quite quickly. Because you want a turnaround time of between planting and harvesting of weeks. You don't want to go for months because your lunar mission and your lunar base is going to be about 6 months.
It's funny because astronauts, it's no surprise to anybody how much training astronauts have got to go through. Do you think now that they're going to have to add, go do a season with a farmer to understand how to grow crops efficiently and properly?
Basis qualification.
Well, they do that now. I mean, there have been experiments on the space station where they've grown the plants. They don't grow them in soil on the space station. They grow them in water, something called hydroponics. But there is also another thing which is well known. I'm sure I don't need to tell farmers and gardeners this. When you are doing gardening and you're growing plants, you actually are happier. And if you are isolated for a long period of time in space, with only 4 or 5 colleagues around, the opportunity to sort of go into your greenhouse and potter about is believed by many of the psychologists to be an extremely good thing for the astronauts. They're making something they're going to eat. They're going to be in a familiar environment. And, maybe they even want to talk to their plants.
It's interesting what you mentioned about, the broccolis. It's all
good quality, vegetables. So, you've got that well-being from actually growing and nurturing, and maybe having a little bit of some time on your own, especially when you're on top of each other in a space station. Also actually being able to have something that digestibly is much better for you.
Yes, rather than popping your vitamin C and D in, having your vitamin tablets every day, to be able to actually eat something with your vitamin C, D, K, etc. The kale and the spinach and so on, which we know is good for your diet. And obviously, if you're growing it yourself, there's always that kind of a nice feeling, isn't it? All farmers love that. I come from a farming background. The idea that this is something that you grew, you took, you make. I mean, it's a very positive mindset, isn't it?
I don't know about you, Josh, but I look forward to seeing the sponsorship deals.
We're open to suggestions of your first moon tea, right?
They're just all patches. They'll just be branded up. It'll be on TikTok.
Nigel, this is obviously a big project for the University of Kent. What other work do you want to highlight whilst you've got the chance, just before we finish?
It's part of a bigger project. I mean, we are looking at all the other things that you would need to go into space. What you're going to build your space station of, what materials you're going to build the space station of, transport to there, communications. But we also do the science. We're interested in, one of my main areas is, how did we get here? The origins of life. Is there life on other planets? Do other planets drink tea? I mean, you can think of those sort of things. But seriously, I mean, that is what a lot of our work is about. And if we're going to build a base on the moon, there are lots of things we can do on the moon we can't do on Earth. There will be materials we can build. There are drugs that we can make. We can go to the dark side of the moon where we have no interference from the radio signals and everything from Earth, put our radio telescopes there and look out into space and explore space in other ways. So the Loon is going to be a place where we go and do science, and we'll be able to do science we've never been able to do before, and answer the big questions, including, how did life begin on Earth? Is there life in other stars? These are the questions we'll be able to answer by producing science in bases on the moon. And that's what makes everybody excited. And we think that this century, this is what going to be, it's not going to be, in 100 years' time, people will be having these interviews and they'll be saying, well, of course we built a space base, on the moon 30 years, not in the 2030s. And everybody's been going there ever since. What's the problem?
It's really exciting. Thank you very much for giving up your time today, Nigel. It's been really interesting. And especially that shared learning and utilising those soils from different regions in the UK and trying to simulate what's ultimately on the moon. And hopefully we can bring some more learnings back down and have more than just a non-stick pan to show for it.
Indeed. All right. And we will be reporting more experiments and results, not just from our group, but also we're collaborating with people across Europe and so on. So there's going to be much more about this in the next couple of years. So literally, watch this space.
I can tell you really enjoyed that one, Josh.
Yeah, really good. I love a bit of space, and yeah, what a fascinating guest to have on.
Whipping out all the facts there, Josh, about non-stick frying pans. It's like an expert.
Love it. So this week we've been talking about, it's been quite livestock focused. And then on our next podcast episode, we are talking all things tenants, and that'll be off the back of the tenants conference, which the NFU are hosting, and should be a good dive with two new presenters.
Jax and Mike will be our last two presenters, and then you've met all six of us. So if you've heard anything that you want more information for in this podcast, double check the show notes, and of course always like, share and subscribe,
and also head to NFU online because there's lots of information there too. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Bye.